Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting comics loving, fandom loving edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be peering into the lovely creative space with all of the shelving and fantastic characters of Matthew Manning. Matthew, thank you for jumping in and having a second chat with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
A pleasure, absolutely a pleasure. Folks out there will know you from course, working in TMNT, Worlds Like Batman, and last year you released probably the definitive guide to the many appearances of Batman in, I guess it's called the multiverse. So multiple iterations of that character.
Yeah, it was Batman: The Multiverse of the Dark Knight by Inside Editions put that one out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what's new in your creating, and what worlds are you currently exploring?
Uh, well, I'm doing a variety of jobs, most of which I can't talk about yet, unfortunately.
Exciting things, exciting things. Yeah.
I've got two DC comics coming out fairly soon that haven't been solicited yet, which I expected them to be solicited already. Um, they should be in the next maybe month or two. Those should be announced, so I'm excited about those. And then I'm currently right now. Today I was working on I have a couple little quick assignments for Marvel, and then I'm doing a big 114 page graphic novel for my first graphic novel for First Second. So I've not worked for them
Nice.
with them before, so it's turning out to be a really fun book. Again, that one's not been solicited, so I don't think I can say much more than that. But but yeah, that, and then I also just did a 2 week stint on a newspaper comic, which I can't talk about yet either. But, but that was a really fun experience, kind of a character I've always wanted to write. So I was really excited to get to do that. And the best part about that particular project is the artist, just by coincidence, happened to be a friend of mine that I've known for years. We both actually decades ago, probably now, like 2 decades ago now, worked at, when I was just trying to get my career started, I worked with this artist at a Barnes and Noble over a holiday,
Nice, nice.
a seasonal shift at a Barnes and Noble in Brooklyn. So it was really fun to get to reunite with him. And hopefully I'll be able to talk about that one soon too. But as of now, I can't get into specifics about, the actual that assignment yet. I would,
hmm
and then I also just finished a couple weeks ago a book for another book for DK Publishing, um, which I did find out also today I wasn't allowed to talk about.
Many, many secret things. I'm picturing like these unmarked attaché cases just sitting around, like it will be opened at some point. But that's very cool and definitely a testament to your ability to write across different forms for different audiences, different purposes. And you mentioned First Second. They were one of the first publishers that I started checking out when I really started to realize that comics were about more than sort of the big two and superheroes and some of those kind of things because they publish some really interesting stuff. So I'm curious to see how all that shapes up as well.
Yeah, I've been wanting to work for them for a while. I've had a lot of friends that have worked with them, and I've heard good things. So I'm kind of it was one of those things that just worked out at the right time. When I had a couple months that was a slow couple months, and I kind of was reaching out a little bit, seeing what was available, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we have this," and I was like, "Oh, awesome!" So it's working out nicely so far. I mean, I just 2 days ago put the finishing touches on the outline, which for this has been a bit of a process because we back and forth a couple times with different ideas for this book between me and the two editors I'm working with, and we've kind of polished it up now to something I'm really happy with, and so I'm getting very excited to just dive into that one completely. But
Cool.
it is a another one that's all ages. I hesitate to say kids books. I don't really write most things for kids, just kids in mind, because I feel like I don't talk down to kids when I write all ages books, and I didn't like to be talked down to when I was a kid. There's essentially when I say like all ages, it's just like there's not really anything offensive that would
Yeah.
bother me, and it could be understood by all ages. I try to hit that sweet spot of that if that's something that would entertain me as well as something that would entertain like my daughters, and I don't, I guess that might also speak to my maturity level, but I'm pretty easy to entertain, I guess.
Well, I spent almost a decade as a middle school teacher, hence the shirt with AMLE, and so that definitely speaks well to having books that are all ages. I picked up so many titles and thought, oh, I would love to share this with a classroom with students, and then you get to that one or two kind of beats in the plot that make it more of a difficult pick. So glad to hear that you're creating in that space. And First Second does, I mean, all ages material, young adult, adult. So wonderful to hear that you're contributing to that.
Yeah, that's been a fun. It also was another project I haven't mentioned is I'm doing a 6 issue mini series for Storm King Comics, the John Carpenter's comic company.
Uh-huh.
And that also was we were maybe going to debut in October at the New York Comic Con, but it sounds like it's not going to come out by then. And so we're just kind of it's still something that's not solicited yet, but it's a project that's 15 years in the making with me.
Wow.
And this one is not for kids though. So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
very yeah, it's a little bit more. It's a sci-fi book, and it's a sci-fi thriller. But there was some scene. I actually wrote a version of this because I had sold this to another publisher years ago, and the artist at the time that we hired never turned in a single page. And so
Mm,
after a year, they had to finally fire him. This was actually for, I guess I could say it was for Wildstorm Comics, when they were still, at DC as an imprint of DC.
hmm
And
hmm
so the artist never drew a single page. And so had signed on as a co-creator. So then there was all this legal stuff of getting him off the book. And by the time he was off of it, Wildstorm essentially was folded into DC. And so he had no place for the book. And Vertigo didn't want it at that point, and then Vertigo went away.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, all right, so finally I got the rights back for it. And and I kind of sat on it for a while because I was, it bummed me out anytime I looked at it now. And then I was talking to a couple years ago to the folks at Storm King, and they mentioned, "Oh, do you have something for sci-fi?" And I was like, "Well, I have this thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's something I really love." So, but I hesitated to put it back out there, and then um, and they liked it right away, and so I essentially rewrote the thing complete because I mean it was I found out that I wrote this series originally when my wife found out she was pregnant with our first child. The same week I found out I was doing a series for supposedly for Wildstorm and we were having a baby. And my daughter just turned 14 in June. So it's
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So I had to really rewrite a lot of things. People were using flip phones.
Right.
There was a lot of mention of DVDs in it. I was like, well,
hmm
these aren't as popular these days. So I rewrote a lot of it and changed a lot of the things that I wasn't quite happy with now because I've changed a lot as a writer in that time. And so
hmm
it's kind of now, so it's really a whole new thing. I'm really excited about it. The art is looking fantastic. I just got emailed today that the artist has just finished the first issue. And he's going to
Nice.
send the rest of the line. He's also coloring it, and so he's going to send the rest of the line art soon, and then we'll start seeing the colors come in for that issue and keep going because this is 6 issues, and we're hoping to do. Ideally, I would love to do it as 18 total, but this first story arc is 6 issues, and we're hoping that it sells well enough, or But so
Yeah.
yeah, that's just the other end of the spectrum I'm working at. So it's a lot of juggling a lot of different styles and a lot of different like formats between prose and comics and a little bit of everything. So
Yeah. How do you make some of those switches, thinking about genre, like an all ages book, and then to something that's a sci-fi thriller? Are there particular steps, soundtracks, anything like that that you use?
no, I kind of just to me it's like really refreshing to go from like writing about a character to writing a different my own characters or because this was my own characters or writing other licensed characters. So
Mm,
it's nice to just it's really refreshing and like I'll do children's books like Scooby-Doo children's books or something, and that's completely like a complete palate cleanser after doing like a horror kind of thing. So it's not like I don't really like to be pigeonholed into one, genre or one kind of format just because it does get like I feel like it would get monotonous after a while. Where like right now I'm just kind of jumping around a lot of different crazy extremes. So
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine it's also kind of a step and some creative thought process to go from prose to comics and then comics to kind of a newspaper comic strip format as well.
yeah, the newspaper comic strip was also yeah was a lot. I have a cartooning major from the School of Visual Arts, so I kind of comics have been in my blood forever. I actually discovered comic strips before I discovered comic books, and the newspaper, the Sunday funnies were a huge deal, for me. More, like we'd come home, and that's and from my family was religious, and we go to church, and then my church was reading the Sunday funnies, right afterwards. That was really like to me like learning the language, and so that writing a comic strip was a lifelong goal of mine too, and this is the first time I've ever done one for like professionally. And so to do that, it was a little bit different because they are even like as the some of the people I was talking to that at the strip, they do serve, like you have to serve in a very small amount each episode. So a little tiny snippet of the story each day. So it's hard to get to get that when like it's less than the information that normally you can convey in like a comic book page. So it doesn't even translate like that. It's just a little bit of information at a time and making it interesting and keeping, keeping the narrative going the whole time. So it was a challenge for me, but it was like so much fun. And I feel like especially when the art started to come in, it looks exactly like I was hoping for. So it's one of those things that's like, this is definitely a dream come true project, and we're hoping we can do more down the line, but that's another thing, Let's see how this does when it comes out. And this one might not even come out till 2025, it sounds like. So
Oh
I
wow, yeah, yeah.
have to tease it for a while before I'm allowed to officially talk about it. But
Yeah.
I'm actually, that's one thing too I wanted to mention. I am gonna hopefully in the next month or two, I'm gonna be starting a newsletter, and so that will be a good way for people to catch up with what all these projects I can't talk about. I can slowly start talking about them, but I also would like to include some like maybe kind of career writing tips in there, and also some since you see this crazy Batman collection behind me, I might spotlight for the Bat fans. I might spotlight a weird thing from my collection, each newsletter as well. Because yeah, I've been a Batman collector since the '89 movie ruined my life. So
I was also big into that movie and still am. So absolutely, it was an anchor point for me. Well, I was going to ask about those spaces, so we'll of course circle back to the newsletter. I was also going to ask, in line of Batman, what the research process was like, because I imagine that would be some very fun, but also work intensive research to put together sort of a multiversal compendium.
yeah, for that one actually it was more of I think I'd read everything in there, all the comics, some because I've been like I said since '89 I've been reading and going back and reading everything I missed when I was one of these little kids that was like I remember being in like junior high and buying like 1960s comics that no one I mean first off I lived in the middle of nowhere farm school, middle Ohio, very small. And there was just me and one other person that liked comics in our whole school anyway. And then that I was reading I'm like reading Metamorpho comics and like really, like these, like the first appearance of Barbara Gordon Batgirl and all this is what I'm spending my money on, which back then wasn't very much. So glad I bought it when I did, But yeah, so for that particular book, it was really just refreshing, like refreshing my memory on some of these, and just indulging in like reading some of these comics I hadn't read since they first came out, like Batman Holy Terror I hadn't read since it was new that week, and
Yeah.
so and some of that I've read more than once that I kind of like Gotham by Gaslight. That's a thing I've read multiple times, but I, I could do with one more reading, even though I didn't really, so it was kind of fun reading a lot of, but when it comes to Batman research, that's the one area I don't really have to do a lot of reading when I write those kind of books. It's like that kind of like the home team. Like I know, like that's already in here, it's not. I had a friend when my first Batman history book I ever did was was the with Bob Greenberger, we did the Batman Vault, and
Mhm.
my friend was just like, "Yeah, it's going to just be one long run-on sentence of me going like, and Batman did this, and Batman did this." But so it's kind of one of those things. And I've written, I think I've written at least a dozen Batman history books as well. So that's one. He and Spider-Man are the two characters probably I've written the most books about. I've definitely written more Batman books than anybody else, which is kind of a fun bragging point. I can
Definitely.
that's like the dream of like fifth grade me of like, yeah, I want to know more about Batman than anybody.
Hmm.
So it turned it into a job. But so that's been so for that particular book, it was really just a lot of rereading some stuff and then trying to throw in like what's really super obscure things can I throw in that other fans might not like know right like there was a Batman from when the Wild West hero Jonah Hex briefly went into like a Mad Max future and they called his book Hex. So
Hmm.
Batman of that reality, it was only in like 3 issues, and it was actually the only Jewish Batman. All we knew was that he was Jewish and that his last name is Cohen. They didn't even give him a first name, and his hideout was in the Statue of Liberty. And so like it was one of these really obscure. I was like, oh, I love that, So
Hmm. Hmm.
I got to throw in some really little things like that, or Bat Mouse from the Zoo Crew with Captain Carrot. It wasn't in his reality. It was in the reality that the main character of Captain Carrot, like he was a cartoonist. So Rodney Rabbit, I guess, was the cartoonist, and he created this just a lot of animals, and
Hmm.
Batman was part of that. So he was inside a universe inside a universe. So
Love it. Love it. Yeah.
I did a lot of those, and then hit the major one, the Dark Knight Returns and Vampire Batman, and all the ones people expect to see, and then Batman Beyond and things like that, and then got to really have fun with some of the extra entries, which is nice.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. Then it came at a really fortuitous time, being the sort of, I don't know if relaunch is the right word, but maybe a reinvigoration of some of the Elseworlds books with
Oh yeah.
Andy Diggle's Gotham by Gaslight, The Kryptonian Age. So nice companion to that event as well.
Yeah, and I was really happy to see the return of that label just because I
Yeah.
feel like it's very clear for a reader like, oh, okay, this one's not in the regular continuity. Like there's so many different universes, it's always been hard to, that's why they did the original Crisis on Infinite Earths in the 80s just because they were like, there's too many worlds, let's combine them. And then they're like, wait, now we've limited ourselves, let's make more worlds, so
Hmm. Hmm.
I feel like the Elseworlds was the easiest way, like right off the bat, to know, especially because I was there at the birth of that label. Gotham by
Hmm.
Gaslight was the first one, but it wasn't labeled as an Elseworlds. And then Batman Holy Terror was the first labeled Elseworlds. And so that's when I was like, oh, okay, I get what, like, so they could do even subtle, slight, not as large changes, or they could, and it kind of just let readers know right away that this is a self-contained thing. This is all you need to read, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a go-to Elseworlds?
Um, well, besides like Gotham by Gaslight, or if you consider Dark Knight Returns an Elseworlds, those are probably ones I visit more than others. And I really did like the Dark Knights of Steel, which is not it wasn't under the Elseworld, now it is. But when
Hmm.
they first
Hmm.
did that, I thought that was a really fun series, and I did get to do a story in the DC versus Vampires, so that's kind of a
Yes, yes.
so I had a short Black Lightning story in their companion book, All Out War, DC vs. Vampires All. So I got to do that, and that was a lot of fun for me. But well, I grew up a fan of Batman and the Outsiders. That's where I really kind of came into the comics.
Hmm.
Actually, I read that before I saw the '89 movie. So there was a couple comics we just had laying around the house. Who knows when they came in, into our house? But that was one of them, and an issue of Batman Family was another. But that's where I got that love of characters like Metamorpho and Black Lightning, and obscure characters in general. I love those. So,
Nice, nice.
like,
Batman Nevermore is a go-to for me.
oh yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
one, yeah. Although we didn't get into that version in the book, so
yeah, yeah. It's room for another volume right
yeah.
there.
They had asked me. The original editor on the book had said, "Okay, well, we need like I forget that he said like 56 or something." He's like, "Do you think we can get that many alternate Batmans?" And I said, "Well, I made a list and it was like 200, and
Yeah.
I'll whittle it down." But, but yeah, you have some that are kind of similar. Like you have, the we didn't put the DC versus vampires in there because we had the Kelly Jones Red Rain Batman.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
vampire in there. So, it's kind of like, well, let's, make it as fun and like every entry is as unique as we can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was going to ask and typically do where people can find information because you have all of these sort of secret projects across different ways of creating as well as a body of work that's out there. So any particular spaces where folks can connect with the newsletter, connect with you at conventions or anything like that?
Well, when I finally get it up and running, because I do neglect my website, I need to update that more often than I do. But my website's just my name, MatthewKManning.com, and that'll have the newsletter on there, and then I'll have it on all my socials. I'm on Facebook and Blue Sky, Instagram, and a little bit. I haven't been on that too much, and then every once in a while on Twitter, not too much on there anymore, but. Enough that I'll post about all so whatever your preferred social media is, I'll probably post on the, my
Mhm.
newsletter on there and that sort of thing. So,
Cool, cool. Well, with Batman Cape Crusader out, I think my last point is I hope to see a story from you in that universe as well at some point.
oh yeah, I'd absolutely love. I'm six episodes in. I'm watching it slowly, and
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for Art Deco and for like, and I think it's like a very score forward show, like the old animated series where like you really hear that the music, and it's very much part of the show, and
Hmm.
that's the stuff I felt like the new Batman Adventures and other shows since have kind of lacked, that style of those like mini movies where they're kind of back to that, which is what I fell in love with that as a kid, didn't realize why I loved it, and then as an adult, like still like have started to realize, oh, these are the elements that made this magic. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, my first job at DC was my first freelance comic was Justice League Adventures. So in the Batman
Yes.
the animated universe, and then I worked on Batman Strikes, which tied into the Batman
Hmm.
cartoon,
Hmm.
Legion of Superheroes in 31st Century, which tied into that cartoon, and even some Teen Titans Go, and I think there's a couple more other. Oh, Beware the Batman was another one I did tie-ins for.
Hmm. Hmm.
I would absolutely love to do something like this. I'm not sure if they're doing a tie-in book, or if they are, it might be like Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker and other people with ties to the direct to the show. But
Yeah,
if I can worm my way in there, I'd love to do something like this because I do like the whole very much like monster movie, you know, uh, kind of theme they're going for throughout the episodes, which has been really a lot of fun. So yeah,
definitely.
that's definitely a world that I would like to work in. All and other ones, I'd love to do the Batman '89 comics. I've just been loving what they've been doing for those, and
Hmm.
if that ever opens up a little bit more, I'd love to do something in there. That was because that got me into this, so I figured I need to
Oh
get.
yeah. Yeah,
But
I was excited to see Echoes. So, and they've laid lots of threads in that book for multiple characters and directions to go. So that would be wonderful.
and yeah, they've just been doing. It's really fun to see Sam Hamm back though, writing his
Mhm.
universe of Batman, and that's so it's kind of like, well, if he's writing it, like I'm just a fan of it. I've got ideas, but that's the source. Like I remember when I did that's how I felt. I did this convention years and years ago in Brooklyn, right after that Batman Vault book came out, and it was my
Mhm.
first history of Batman. And I did a panel, and it was me and like Bob Greenberger, the co-writer, and Denny O'Neil. And I was like, well, don't ask me, just ask Denny all the questions. Like I don't want to answer anything. I just wrote about what he wrote, like all he
Mhm.
edited. He's the but that's he yeah he was always the one person in comics that I felt really intimidated around, even though he's nothing but nice. Every time we spoke, we emailed several times, and I would see him at shows from time to time, but it was still kind of like when I was an intern at DC Comics years ago. I just remember walking by him in the halls and just being like, oh, don't trip. you
Yeah,
know
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you certainly contributed to that world, commented on it, expanded it. Uh, any other potential worlds that you'd like to create in that you've not had the chance to?
well, I'm having a lot of fun doing creator owned stuff right now, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of where another thing I didn't mention too, that we're just I did a comic called The Spark, and it's for kids. It's a graphic novel, but originally it's for this company called High Touch High Tech, and they do science experiments for kids all over the world, like so literally all over different classrooms all over the world. Um, and so was interested in doing a comic, and a mutual friend set us up with each other. He's here in Asheville as well because I live in Asheville, North Carolina,
Hmm.
and it turns out that his business is centered here, and we got to talking, and so we did uh, I wrote an issue for him that takes place with the characters that they had created for their website, but I kind of made up the story, made kind of put that character in and made up all these new characters go with them, and it's kind of a fantasy adventure, but the fun part is kids. There's three science experiments in each issue, so the kids can do at home with the supplies we mentioned at the beginning of it, and mostly household supplies. With little or you don't need too much supervision from parents, so it's kind of like fairly easy. Or when it does, we say get a parent to help you, this kind of thing.
Hmm.
But so it's essentially a fantasy story with these elementary school kids kind of going on these adventures through like kind of a micro universe type story, which is it's been so much fun. And my friend Matt Lux from college, who does books, he's done books for First Second and other
Hmm.
publishers, and we've old friends since the first day of moving into our dorms. And so I got him to draw it for us, and we decided to expand it to 6 issues. And he printed the first one, which I've had at some conventions just to kind of proof of concept. This is the comic, and so it sounds like in the next week or two he's received a contract and we're getting picked up by a major publisher. Which
Nice, nice.
I can't mention the publisher yet, but because it hasn't gone through, but we're hoping in the next week or two that's going to happen, and it'll be set as all 6 issues will be in a graphic novel format for kids, and hopefully summer of next year, that one will be coming out. So doing that was a really fun experience, and it was kind of like where what it's a lot of world. I like to do world creating a lot. That's always the most fun.
Hmm.
And which is what I've done in that John Carpenter's book for an adult audience, and then doing that just seems it's just so much fun to like get in there and and create these kind of fantasy realms and things, and so that's what Matt and I have got to do with this, and his art has been it's exactly what he was the first person I thought of when I thought of this project because he was in the exact kind of art style I wanted for it. It's very lively and he had so much humor to it. Like he added a panel where it was the script is called for a family that's really like uh lethargic at watching TV, not
Hmm.
and he drew my family as the family on the couch. And so it's super great. I posted it on my Instagram at one point if you want to see what a little bit of a little teaser from what the book's going to be. But yeah, so we're both really excited to get that out to a larger audience and that sort of thing, and hopefully we can do a couple more in that world. And so but yeah, there's as far as licensed characters, there's tons of characters I'd like to do. The One of the biggest ones on my bucket list that I have not done yet is Thundercats. I love
Yes.
Thundercats. I'd love to do something with that. Um, that kind of whole world, that and Silverhawks, that whole world. There was a point where I was very close to doing a Silverhawks series a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and then there was a whole rights issue, and the person that had the rights found out they didn't have the rights, and then
Oh no.
so it was this whole thing. But yeah, I'd like to do that world sometime, and then, but there's just like countless DC and Marvel characters that I would be happy with writing again. There's like even doing more Ninja Turtle stuff. Although I
Hmm.
feel like I've might have exhausted a lot. I still have some turtle ideas, but I feel like I got a lot out there because I on the several books that I wrote for them, and but it's just kind of whatever. It's fun to whatever things happen to come my way would be nice. Like, and then, but yeah, for DC also, while I'm naming bucket list things, a Tim Drake thing would be a huge
Oh
thing.
yeah.
The Tim Drake Robin would be something I've always. Well, that would probably be an assignment if I ever got something substantial with Tim Drake. I would probably be like crying, happy tears, like one of these. This is the thing I set out to do, kind of moment. Those
Yeah.
they're few and far between, but are very nice moments. Like when I got to do the Batman Turtles crossover, that was a big deal. Like, oh man, like
Hmm. Hmm.
there's been 2 writers that have been allowed to make Batman meet the Ninja Turtles, and I got to do the animated version, and that was just a really fun project.
With the Bruce Tim style and all the things.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
then John Samariva drew it for us. John's work is so lively. He combined the Turtles, the 2012 Turtle series with the animated Batman style like just perfectly. Like
Hmm.
I didn't like we got a lot of comments about that, like that I didn't think those two worlds would mesh as easily as they did, and that's just because of John's work. And he's doing a new thing too. He's doing a that versus multiverse. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a that video game where you can make Bugs Bunny fight Batman, that sort of
Oh,
thing.
nice, nice. Yeah,
He's doing a comic based on that, which looks really, really fun in his lively style as well. But yeah,
cool.
that's I think that just entered. I think the Batman Turtles. I think we're in our sixth printing now or something. So that one's been an enduring one, which has been really, really gratifying to see that people are still discovering it. And people are like, "Wait, I didn't know this happened." Like, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like I read the other one. I didn't know there was another one. It's like so it's been fun to have like every convention I go to. That's one that's always on my table, just because people are get excited to see that and are not even aware that it exists because it's published by IDW instead of DC. So I think less stores got it, but
Hmm.
it's chugging along for them. So I know that.
Definitely so. Yeah. Any go-to convention spaces that you typically try to make it to?
I've been I since I'm here in North Carolina, I try not to miss Heroes Con,
Hmm.
whether
Hmm.
getting a table there or just going for fun. I've done that a couple years where I just go for one day and just they get such a variety of guests that it's like, oh, here, like my childhood heroes are here, and that sort of thing. And then like the hot indie creators are there, and so that's a fun one. And I get to catch up with a lot of people that I don't normally see. Um, I do New York Comic Con most years. I think this year is one of the first years I'm skipping, just because the two things that I thought were coming out aren't. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like,
Hmm.
well, I might be doing I am going to be doing a little uh, local one instead that's happening that same weekend. I believe it's in Waynesville, North Carolina, if I'm remembering right. But it's um, what is it? The Smoky Mountain Geek Expo, I believe. It's
Nice, nice.
hard to keep them all straight. And I do a lot of local shows. I hope to get to San Diego sooner than later. But that might be something that if our Storm King book is out by then, I might be trying to promote it there. And um, that sort of thing. And also this Spark comic, where we're in theory, if this when this deal is finalized, they're going to be doing like a run of giveaway of the first issue to kind of tease for it. So I'm hoping wherever they do that at, I want to be at that show. So
Hmm.
yeah, just kind of it depends, but yeah, I don't do as many shows as I used to. Um, just because it's hard with having daughters and stuff and having to go away a lot. But
Hmm. Hmm.
when we do some fun shows, like I've actually been looking into, I'd like to do a Chicago show just because my one daughter really would like to go to Chicago. So I'm like, oh, let's turn it into a family trip, So we'll do
Yeah.
those from time to time. We did Terrific Con not too long ago in Connecticut, and I used to do that one right when the first couple years it started because we lived in Connecticut at the time. And now that convention is huge, and that's another great show where the variety of guests is incredible. So
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of great ones out there. There's a lot more I'd like to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking forward to seeing Matthew Lux's approach to the script that you have for him as well. I loved Prunella and the work that he's done across all ages books as well.
Yeah, Matt and I actually did my very first self-published comic. Matt drew part of it, and
Nice.
so did Raina Telgemeier, who's Raina's an old friend of mine, and my friend uh, Steve Hawker did it. He was another incredible artist, and the cover was done by Farrell Dalrymple, who is
Oh,
did
nice.
Puff War, and yeah, he's one of the best artists. I absolutely love Farrell stuff. So, like, just all these people we met at art school. So it's been nice to stay in touch with everybody and see everybody doing so well for the most part. Like you just kind of and everybody's ended up in different spaces, which is a lot of fun. Like
Hmm.
it never like some of my friends have ended up in children's books, and some have ended up in comics, and some have done storyboards for TV shows, and so it's interesting. Like I went to art school and decided not to draw, so I'm one of those people who kind of had an odd career route as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I appreciate the creative community and I appreciate the creating across different formats, different genres that you do, and I also appreciate the time. Anything that you want to mention before we close out?
Not really. I think I mentioned most of the, kind of almost mentioned most of the things I'm working on.
Lots of glimpses, lots of teases.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully I'll just watch this space. Oh, there is one other thing that we're still working on. It's slowly chugging along. Is I'm doing an Asheville graphic novel. It's a history of
Yes, uh-huh.
yeah, of Asheville here, and the art has been incredible. We've gotten two grants far from the Preservation Society here in Asheville that have been helping fund the book, and it's done by a local artist who's painting every single page, and we've both been teasing a lot of art from that as well. That's definitely a 2025 release for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've written about what two-thirds of the book, so I still have a third to go, which I'm going to hopefully be tackling in the next right after the first second book. I should be able to kind of set aside the rest of the time for that, which I'm really anxious to get back to. But it's just been a really fun project, and it is a local. It's a local book, but it's going to be published by the History Press, and it's going to be their first graphic novel ever, and so it
Nice.
will be available. It's available. It'll be available nationally, and like it'll be on all their Barnes and Noble and Amazon, and at your order at your local bookstore, that type of thing when it finally comes out. But I feel like it's a really interesting encapsulation of uh, a southern city, but
Hmm.
a southern artistic city, which you don't see a lot. So, even if you've never even been here, I think it's going to give an interesting history because we go from prehistory, so dinosaurs, until
Oh, wow.
like modern day. So and we try to all in 100 pages. So,
Nice.
and
Nice.
it's an all ages book that's going to be and it's all told through the point of view of a narrator who's a black bear because black bears are wanderers by nature. They just go wherever they want. We get them all the time just walking through town. And so this black bear is walking through time and telling us about the history of, and obviously a complicated history because it is a southern city. And so we're going to hear it's not all bright and sunny. There's some
Hmm.
obvious really tragic history in the South, and so we don't shy away from any of that. But I think we've found a nice rhythm of where there's serious moments. We find some moments for levity and kind of make a whole tell a whole history of a place, which has been. I mean, I moved here over a decade ago, and I've become obsessed with Asheville's history. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's the same as the Batman the Animated Series. It's an art. There's so many Art Deco buildings because when the Depression hit, they just didn't have money to do anything else, so these buildings just stayed here. And so we have all this like just these like really interesting architecture, and then you have an artist. It kind of become uh, it was taken over kind of by artists in certain areas, and so it's an interesting town that we absolutely love, and hopefully I won't have to move my long boxes ever again. We're settled in. Too many of those.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate that as well. Appreciate the time, the creating, and looking forward to reading that.